Hello, welcome. I am your host, Dali. We want to welcome you to our live show. And if you're watching from YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Amazon, wherever you are, we would just thank you for being here, and we appreciate you, your service, and your support to our community. This is the Veterans Radio Show, and without you, we would not be able to have this segment. So hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. Please share this episode with any other veteran or person who might want to support the show. Let's hear your thoughts. Don't be shy. We like to read them while we're live and ask questions. So, lastly, if you have any, I'm sorry, but never mind. I was going to repeat myself, and I got a little nervous there. But today we have a special guest. We have Bergeron, and I'm really excited for you to know him. He's doing some amazing, wonderful things. And he happens to be a sponsor for today. So thank you so much, Brett, and welcome to the show. How are you doing?
Hi, Dali. How are you?
Doing well. Excited to learn more about you. So let's dive right in. First of all, can you give us a little background of your military history or how you're connected to our military community?
Yeah, sure. I joined the Marine Corps back in 2009. I served in 1st Tanks up in 29 Palms for 4 years as a tank crewman with 1st Tank Battalion. I just served 4 years. I was in from 2009 to 2013.
That's really, man, that's a hot area to be serving at, especially during summer.
And then jump in the middle of a tank, and it gets upwards of 130 degrees in there. So it's not a pleasurable experience, but somebody's got to do it.
I hear you. I happen to know what that feels like because I worked on tanks. I was a mechanic on the tanks, and I was out at Fort Irwin, so I can kind of get an idea of what that feels
all
like.
about it.
Yeah, definitely. So so tell us a little bit more about your military background and how that led up to doing what you're doing now.
Yeah, so it's funny. I didn't really have any plans to join the military initially. I just happened to be at my buddy's house, and he had a recruiter coming. So I obliged for the trip over to the recruiting station, and I ended up joining, and he did not. So not sure how that worked out, but as fate would have it, I ended up joining in 2009 nonetheless. Served for 4 years, like I said, in 29 Palms as a tank crewman. Wasn't really sure what I wanted to do, if I wanted to continue and make it a career for the full 20. But I did ultimately have my first daughter, Mia. So I opted to get out to stay close to her here in California. So as a single father, I didn't really know what I was going to do. So I just started in sales, working for Verizon. Wasn't really super happy with it. So I applied to other jobs, got connected to a finance company. I worked there for the last 6-7 years. But during the pandemic, I saw a need for small business owners, to get access to funding, as traditional banks just weren't lending to them. And so I decided to get into the alternative lending space, and ultimately created Cardinal Capital to help those small businesses in need.
Wow, that's crazy, right? Now, first of all, I want to address the fact that your friend did not enlist. Did you remain friends after you enlisted?
Oh yeah, he's still one of my very, very good friends, longtime friend for life, for sure. But yeah, I do give him a little pushback every now and then to remind him that he was supposed to join with me and ultimately backed out. But it's all good. Nothing but love.
Does he regret not having joined with you?
No, I don't think so. He's doing quite well for himself. He's he's got a nice family, loving wife, so he's doing just fine.
Yeah, that's awesome. So tell me, how do you think that your experience those 4 years in the military helped you in your business?
I think it's helped tremendously. Entrepreneurship is not easy. The military also is not easy. No 2 days are the same. But at the end of the day, you just got to keep your head down and figure out a way to push through, persevere. So it taught me that. It's also taught me to be resilient. There's days where you're going to want to quit or give up, but you can't. At the end of the day, you got to provide and feed your family somehow. So it's taught me to just be hard nosed and keep your head down and push through it.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. I think that a lot of us underestimate what we learn in the military. Sometimes we are kind of boxed in with that mentality of, oh, this is just for the military for my specific job. But then you come out and you realize you can apply a lot of the skills that we learn into almost anything. We just have to get a little bit creative. So here you are lending out to businesses. Do you mainly work with veteran-owned businesses, or who is your target market?
I don't really have a specific target market. If you're a small business owner, obviously veteran owned, I'm more than happy to push you to the front of the list, if you will. But my target market is really any small business in need of funding or just advice on where to go to get to that next step, whether it's me or somebody else that I have acquaintances with, to give them the information that they need to be successful in their business, whatever it is, whether it's with me with funding or somebody like Kelly who will be on here in a little bit with business law or estate plan. I have connections to people that I think can help just about any business owner, whether they need funding or not.
So I was on your on your website checking out, the different type of services that you offer, and I see that you have on there listed like SBA loans and short-term type of loans and things like that. So what does that look like if I own a small business, and my questions would probably be, well, do I have to be already making so much money before coming to you, and how many years should I have been established before asking for help from you? So what are the requirements?
Yeah, so as long as you have an established entity, for the most part, we have a product that can suit your needs, whether it's a short-term term loan, it's a merchant cash advance, maybe it's just a business line of credit, an SBA loan. There is a product out there for just about every business type, regardless of time in business. Okay, I know traditional banks are looking for 5 years time in business, annual revenue of upwards of 500,000 to $1 million. Not every business has that, right? But they still need funds to grow, start, grow, or expand. And that's where we come in, right? Our underwriting guidelines with my direct lenders and capital partners are not as tight and overlooked as, say, your traditional bank, your big banks. So the small business, loan brokers, if you will, our relationships can really go a long way in helping just about any business, whether it's just an idea on paper or it's existing.
So then when you help people out, should they have their entire business plan laid out for you? Do you require that? And also, what if the business has no credit whatsoever? Is that something that you work with?
Yeah, of course. Well, I don't necessarily need to see their business plan. During our consultation, I will ask about it, but I don't need to see that personally. Most of the lenders don't actually require that. Um, and then the second part, what was the second part? I'm sorry.
Let me see, business plan and credit. If I don't have any
Yeah.
established credit for my
Yeah.
business.
My apologies.
Okay.
The business credit does not necessarily come into effect for funding. We're always going to look at the actual personal credit score. So as long as they have decent credit, there are cases where we have helped people, business owners with subprime credit, 500 to 600. I mean, there's still products available to you. It may be at a little bit higher of an interest rate, but at least you're able to access the funds to get your business off the ground.
So is there a limit to the amount of money that you lend out?
No, there's really not. Obviously, it's a case by case. Some real estate deals are upwards of multi-million-dollar deals. Most of the small businesses that I deal with, we can get them up to $750,000. Just kind of depends on, revenue, time in business, those type of things. So those things do come into play, but it's not a necessity, right, to get access to funds, if that makes sense.
Oh, that's really good to know, because I know that as a new startup, call it like 3, 5 years, I consider that still a new startup. That's something of concern, especially right now, the pandemic, and with the inflation and the rise in interest rates. So, to a new business owner who wants to get a loan, what is considered a higher interest rate?
A higher interest rate is probably around 30%. It doesn't always happen, but that's typically for over leveraged applicants or subprime. But most of the interest rates are probably right around, 10, 12, 15%.
Okay, wow. But you said it can go up to 30.
It can. It doesn't always happen, but I just had one come across my email this morning, and it was close to 30, or yeah, close to 30%, which is a little high. But if that's what they need to get off the ground, I'm certainly not going to push them to take it, but it's ultimately their choice.
What about a small business that wants to initiate or begin having credit, just for the purpose of building up credit? Is there a certain product that you can recommend people who are watching right now should ask you for?
Yeah, I mean, we have access to 0% intro credit cards. I mean, some of the credit companies are doing away with the 0% intro, but those are great for startup companies just looking to get on their feet. We can get up to $250,000 depending on their personal credit, but that's a great way to start building business credit.
Yeah, that was certainly something very new to me when I began. And it was a little scary too, because, learning that a wage is also on my personal credit.
Hmm.
So thank you for answering that question. I know that Joe is going to come on in, and he's got a few questions of his own. So welcome to the
Great.
show. Yeah, welcome to the show, Joe. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you. Thank you, Dali, and welcome, Brett. A great, great meeting you in person, face to face. I know
Likewise.
we've been chatting back and forth on via email, and yeah, and thank you for being on the show. And great questions, and that's one of the reasons why we decided to kind of collaborate with his company, because there is just an abundance of options out there. I mean, you just have to go online and see how many people are pushing loans and the different options, and it can be very confusing. And then landing on people who really are pushing the 30% interest rate, which, in my opinion, should be illegal. But that's just my opinion. Just my opinion.
I
But
agree.
so, but the well, so we're also very happy to kind of collaborate with Brett on a new program that I would like to talk about a little bit when Kelly comes on, because Kelly is helping us with this program, and Brett is going to be helping us with the lending side of it. So, just happened today that both of our key partners are online on the show. So, Brett, I just wanted to ask just one or two questions, and then we move on to Kelly, and then stay back, and then we can talk later once the show is done. So we can kind of introduce you to Kelly, and we can start working on the program. And Brett, our interest, of course, businesses are asking for money right now, not so much because the government is giving them a lot of zero interest rates and stuff. So it's sometimes a little bit difficult, and because there's so much money available. But our objective is to provide loans for people who are getting or want to get involved in the real estate market.
Right.
So is there a criteria let's say someone wants to, let's say I'm interested in getting involved in buying and helping, let's say, Dali with her new home, and I want to invest in her real estate or be part of her real estate purchase. What would you need from me?
Yeah, so great question. And just real quick, Joe, thank you very much for having me on. It's an absolute pleasure to be on here with you and Dali and Kelly, who will be on here shortly. We have direct relationships with what they call hard money lenders when it comes to real estate. Again, it's just money that's coming from private equity, and their criteria really is a little bit less stringent, if you will, than your traditional bank. So we can lend investment properties, both residential and commercial. We just cannot do primary residence for loans on primary residences. You'd have to go through a traditional broker for that.
Okay, well that's good to know. That's good to know. But if I want to personally get a loan, what would you need from a client? Let's say me, from a client.
Yeah, so traditionally, I'd like to obviously have a consultation, right, and get to know more about what your specific case looks like. But look, obviously the address. Do you have money to come in with? Your credit score, a few months bank statements, and typically tax returns is all I would need. Last 2 years tax returns is about all I would need to at least get the ball rolling.
Okay. Well, thank you. Those were my questions, Dali. And I know we're Kelly waiting on the backstage. So I'll give it back to you, and great meeting you, Brett. And we'll talk in a few minutes.
You bet. Thanks, Joe.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for those questions, Joe. Those are very, very good. And I actually have one last question. So, Brett, if are there any type of businesses that you wouldn't be able to work with, aside from the example you just gave of funding for a personal mortgage?
No, that's really about it. I mean, we can do anything from restaurants to dry cleaners to construction to doctors, dentists, barbershop. I mean, you name it. There's over 100 industries served. E-commerce, aerospace engineering. I mean, you name it. We can. There's a product out there for you.
Wow, that's amazing. Thank you so much for sharing. Just to recap, we pretty much covered about all of the type of loans that you provide for small businesses, and you own Cardinal Capital, and people can check you out at gocardinalcapital.com. And thank you so much again for sponsoring this episode. And I hope to see you back in the show, and hopefully we can collaborate in many other ways.
Absolutely. Thank you, Dali.
You're welcome. And we're going to now move on to our legal segment. Welcome back to our legal segment. We have this every Friday, and our guest and our expert today is our dear Kelly, who, if you've been watching this show for a while now, you already are aware of who she is. So, Kelly, welcome back.
It's always a pleasure to see you, Dalia.
Thank you. So, and let's see, is Joe going to join us today? I believe he is, and I love it when he joins because he always has such good questions.
He does. There he is. Hello, Joe.
Hello. Welcome back.
Thank you very much. I thought that was a wonderful segment, having Brett on the show, and how valuable that is as a business attorney, Joe. You and obviously yourself, who deals with business owners all the time. It's a crucial part of any business that wants to even start and grow. And I think having a resource like Brett is so valuable.
Oh, I think so. And that's, I mean, one of the things that, and it has taken a long time to actually find someone who is personable, who can work with clients on a personal basis, because you go online and you see all these people who you get their information and then they just farm you out to the to the cloud and see who responds. And I really like the fact that he takes the personalized approach, meeting with the client one on one, and see what the needs are, then bring in the resources so they can meet their needs. And so that's one of the things that we like about that, and the fact that he's a veteran-owned company is a double pleasure.
Absolutely. And I think because even getting a loan from a traditional bank, they always want at least you have to be in business for 5 years, right? We need to see your financials. Well, someone that's been in business for 5 years and has financials, I doubt that they need a loan from a traditional bank. So
That's right.
it's counterproductive. But to have someone like Brett, it's amazing, especially for startups, because those are the ones that are really putting in the sweat and tears and blood literally to start the
Hmm.
company, and they've mortgaged their homes. And to have a resource like Brett, and also he said the money actually comes from private equity, and it's very, very difficult for small business owners to actually reach any type of private equity investor.
Oh my
So
gosh,
well
yes,
done. Yes, definitely, anyone that's listening to the show must definitely reach out to Brett.
yes.
I am.
Well, yes. I mean, we used to say, as you know, I used to work with one of the SBA programs and stuff, and it was the tagline was if if you don't need money, you can ask for the loan, and if you need money, you there's no money. So
Correct.
that's, I mean, that's then was the point. So that's why having this type of resources are so helpful, because it's people that start the businesses, people like, that we like us, that we're the boots on the ground, that really are the day-to-day dealings with it, and we are starting something, then we are the ones that need it. So, which that brings me to our segment today, which we'll talk about the program a little bit, but I know we have a segment that is pretty crucial today. It's intellectual property, right?
It is, yes. And before I do start, I have to obviously
Oh,
provide our
yes, of course.
disclaimer.
Yes,
Always, yes. And any information that I share on the show today is only for informational purposes only, and it does not create an attorney-client relationship or privilege. And if anyone is listening out there that would love to connect with me, I'm always happy to hear from you. The law firm is Bagla Law Firm. You can go to baglerlaw.com, and you can always get my contact info from Joe as well.
absolutely. Always my pleasure to send people your way. Always.
Thank you.
So, Dali, did you have a question on intellectual property? Well, why don't we start with the definition first, and then we can go to your question, Dali. How's that?
Good idea.
Okay.
Fantastic. So there seems to be quite a bit of confusion around intellectual property and what it is. Well, there are different types of intellectual property. Intellectual property literally means it's intellect. It's something that's created from an individual. They've used their intellect to create something, and it's considered intangible, meaning that you can't really touch it. It's not a building. It's not a desk. It's intangible property. And the law actually recognizes intellectual property and a variety of different properties underneath that category. The main ones, I'm just going to touch upon 5 quick main topics that do fall under the protection of intellectual property. The very first one is, and it's so common, it is patents, right? Everybody's heard of patents. You can actually get patents for you can get patents for utility patents. Which means that the actual thing that you've created has a use to it. There are design patents. For example, if you're in fashion, I personally love fashion. And if you're in fashion and you've created some sort of outfit, you can actually get that patented, the style. And by the way, talking about fashion, the red soles, the shoes of Christian Louis Vuittons, that is a patent right there, the red soles. Exactly. You can actually have patents on plants as well. So different types of plants. So it's a variety of different items. But a patent, once it's granted, it lasts for 20 years. So you, as the
Wow.
individual, has the right, the exclusive right to use that patent for 20 years. So you better make your money in the 20 years that you own that patent, right? Another type of intellectual property would be a copyright. This is where the confusion lies. Sometimes people don't understand the difference between a copyright and a trademark. A trademark is another type of intellectual property protection. A copyright is exactly how it sounds. You're protecting copy, right? For example, authors. Joe, I believe you've written quite a bit in your life. I'm a fellow author, and any books that we write, they are copyrighted under common law, but you can actually file for copyrighted protection as well for books and poetry and music. All of that can be copyrighted. Now, trademarks are a little different. You can trademark a logo, a symbol, a sign. That's the difference. So it's not vast majority of copy, but little small subsections, if you will. And I have actually got the trademark rights for Queen of Business Law. I own the rights to that. No one else can use it.
That's
Exactly.
awesome.
Exactly. And copyrights, the right, once it is granted to you, they last all the way up until the author passes away, and then 70 years after the passing of the author. That's how long the right is for that copyright. Trademarks, they only last until the individual or the company is using the mark. I have written quite a bit on this, and I do have a newsletter on this too. It's called Use It or Lose It. Okay, so you have to use the granted trademark, the registered trademark, the way it's supposed to be used. And if you don't use it, then you will end up losing it. Somebody else is going to come in and say, oh, this person hasn't used this mark for 5 years, so it's possible that you can actually use the rights to that. The two more, and I'd love to answer some questions. One particular intellectual property right, and you probably won't even think about this one, is franchises. Okay.
Oh, okay.
So when you create a franchise, you're actually creating a process and a procedure, and that's what you license out. So that's exactly what McDonald's is licensing out, Subway's licensing policies and procedures that they have created. That's a type of an intellectual property. And the last one I want to touch upon is digital assets. So what do I mean by digital assets? Digital assets can be your apps, any type of app that you've created. I have an app, I have a podcast, just like you, Joe. It's called Go Legal Yourself, and I have an app for that. That is my intellectual property. Websites are intellectual property. Yeah, even social media sites can be intellectual property. And nowadays, and maybe we do a different segment on this, Joe, because it's getting a lot of attraction, is NFTs. You've heard of NFTs, right?
Right.
And people are trying to use NFTs as currency or even bartering. But how are those protected? So they do fall under the digital assets, under property, intellectual property. But those are some of the things I wanted to touch upon. And again, I'm happy to go into any of those at a different time.
Okay, I have a lot of questions. That was so good.
I know, I could see, Dali, you're like, oh, I want to chime in. Yes.
Right, yeah, I have my notes here. So, okay, so you said 20 years max to own your patent. Was it patent or was that something else?
Yes, the patent.
Okay, so I have a patent, 20 years go by. What happens to that? Who owns it after the 20 years?
It becomes public. Unless there's always a however in law, right? Unless you make certain modifications to the patent, that can extend the life of the patent. But normally it is 20 years, and then it becomes public information, and everyone, all your competitors, can use it.
Okay, so then thank you so much. Thank you. That's so interesting. I didn't know that. Then you also touched on the copyright of books, because so many authors are worried about, their content being stolen or reused some other way. And you said that too, the copyright is until the author passes plus 70 years after their death. That's a long time. So I'm thinking about like Napoleon Hill and, all these authors, because I see the print come out again and again and again. So who owns that? Is it the same thing? It's up for grabs after the 70 years of the passing of the person, or is there a different rule for that?
It all becomes public information after the timing has expired.
Wow, that's incredible. Okay, and my other question. Wait, even if I put like, there's no protection, like say I put it in my will that I want like my grandchildren to be like the owners of, or my great what, however many generations I'll have moving forward. There's no rule like that. They can have grubs for it or anything like that.
Unless they modify it, right? Unless they add to it. So, for example, in Napoleon Hill's example, if one of his grandchilds creates a chapter or two or three to the book and adds it to the book, then now you have that grandchild being the new author of that. And then it's going to be 70 years after he passes, it will become public information.
Wow. Well, that explains now why I've seen so many variations of like what is it? Think or Grow Rich or something. I forgot.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah,
It's a great
wow.
book, though. People should definitely read that, especially small business owners.
Right. Think and Grow
Absolutely.
Rich, Napoleon Hill.
Yeah.
My other question is about the trademark logo. So if I have a logo that has a tagline, am I supposed to ask for a copyright and the trademark for the image itself plus the tagline, the writing part of it?
No, because it's really not copy in the traditional sense of copy. So when you think of copy, you think of a book. Right? You think of poetry, you think of music. That's copyrighted. With a trademark, it's more of that would be a slogan that you would use for your business. It's not going to go on to 3 or 4 pages long. If that slogan does, then you have to copyright that. But if it's just a little slogan underneath your logo, you can actually get it all trademarked at the same time.
So when companies have, say, the same logo, but it's variated, like one can be in color, the other one will be like in a monochrome color, and the other one is like black and white. Is that 3 separate filings for each version, or is that all in one?
That's a great question, Dahlia. Great question. When exactly, initially, when you do the filing, the USPTO is going to ask, are you going to claim color or not? And if someone has has plans on using different colors for different brandings down the line, you should always file as a black and white and no color. And that way you can change it whatever color you want at any time, because you actually own the image. You don't have to actually claim any color whatsoever.
Oh, wow. That's brilliant, actually.
Mm-hmm.
And I've seen where people register in their state, say they register their business, and it'll ask them, do you also want to register your logo? And they say yes. And then there's limitations to that, right? About what happens if they register just in the state versus the federal. Can you explain a little bit about how that works?
Yes, if it's just the state, then you only have rights in the state. So if you registered a mark in California and I registered the mark in Delaware, I can use that mark even though you own the rights in California. I can only use it in Delaware and every other state. Now, if you do a federal trademark, then federal takes priority over the states when it comes to federal, when it comes to trademarking. So now you own the actual mark within the United States.
Wow. Okay. I have another question. So when we own these properties like logos and books, is it smarter for people to copyright them under, like, as the owner being me, Dali Rivera, or my business, Dali Talks LLC? And what are the pros and cons to doing it one way or the other?
Now that depends. That will take a longer conversation. However, I can share with you that are definitely pros and cons to each one. So, for example, with let's just take Coca-Cola, right? Coca-Cola, the company owns the brand. Now, if it was the person, say the person that created Coca-Cola and they owned it, then they would have the right to license that name to the company. Now, if somebody wanted to come in and invest in the company, they're going to say, well, what does the company own? Does it actually own the brand, the name? And they're going to say, no, it's only licensed. That takes away from the value of the company. So it's not going to be a multi-billion-dollar company anymore because it's only a license, which is usually limited. So in that situation, it would be the company that owns it. And so and it brings the value up of the company itself. If you as an individual own a registered trademark, you can actually license it under a licensing agreement to multiple different entities and different people, depending on what you do for a living. So there are pros to both and definitely cons to both as well.
Wow. Thank you so much for answering all these questions. And I feel bad, Joe, I didn't give you the opportunity. I have way more, but back to you, Joe.
No, that was great. Those are great questions, Ali. And those were because what she covered today, even though she talked about maybe 5 minutes, she went with a wide spectrum of different multiple topics that I'm sure like you, like me, and like people in the audience will have a lot of questions. So what I would like to do is split this segment into two. And next time, Dali, we can when Kelly comes in next time, which is next month, we can do a different part of the segment of this, because I learned so much just by your questions. Because Kelly also registered our trademark in the chamber is registered trademark, which is different than just a trademark, and she can explain that next time. Because sometimes you have the TM, sometimes you have the R. What's the difference? So Kelly helped us get the R, and which is very powerful, and I'm very grateful for Kelly. And then so those are the content is vast. So what I would like to do is continue our conversation for next time, Dali. So and we won't think of a new topic. We just continue with this topic, and we can expand for our audience to learn more about it.
That sounds like a really, really good idea. I'm excited.
Awesome. Cool. Excellent. And that way we can write our questions ahead of time.
That's right.
Yeah.
And maybe gather some from people watching right now. So please, if you're watching or if you're watching the replay, send in your questions or just put them in the comments wherever you're watching this so that we can answer those questions so that Kelly can answer those questions next week or next month. I mean.
Yes, that's a great idea. Yeah, we can. And we get questions sometimes on email, so we can save those. So however you want to ask the questions, that we can just send them to Dali so she can ask Kelly, or I can ask Kelly. Both of us can ask Kelly about the answer, because it's a lot of different ways one can do something. So, but thank you very much, and it's back to you, Dali, and thank you, Kelly, again for a great session. And just give back to Dali to close the show.
My pleasure. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Kelly, so much. I always love learning from you. And people, if you're watching, reach out to Kelly. If you need to file anything for your business, reach out to Kelly. She's available. And hopefully we will see you next month. Don't forget to follow the channel, share this video, and send your questions. Have a wonderful weekend and be safe.